So I wanted to ask, to give the viewers a bit of an idea of the sort of writing you do.
Okay.
I know that you recently wrote one about the woman's body, mashallah. So
yes.
if you give us like a little overview of that.
Well, what inspired me to write this was that I think that there's a particular narrative. There's always a discussion in the wider press about Muslim women and about their bodies and about their hijabs and about their clothing and all of that. It always centres around that. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of deconstruct the argument slightly differently. I wanted to look at the way that it's portrayed and the kind of emphasis that's placed on her, but I wanted to do it in such a way to show that there's an incredible level of sexism that is attributed to the Muslim woman that is coming from Western values. Whereas they always, to turn it on its head, whereas they always say that the sexism is within Islam. So they always say that Muslim men oppress Muslim women. And then all of the things that go along with that, the way that they dress, their status in marriage and all of those kind of things. I wanted to show actually all of those things that are fixed on the Muslim woman, that she's oppressed, that her dress oppresses her and all of that, are actually viewpoints and narratives that have also been churned out by Western values and Western ideas dating back hundreds and hundreds of years ago under Orientalism. So the kind of construction of my piece was to present those arguments and right at the end reveal that it was coming from a Western perspective. It's actually coming from a Western narrative about the Muslim woman. And actually the Muslim woman doesn't see herself like that. And that's why she's coming back to Islam. She's adopting the Islamic values and she has made that choice for herself to obey Islam and obey the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that was kind of like the thinking behind it.
So it's basically clearing up the historical baggage and showing the true picture.
I think it's a really interesting piece there. But coming back to our topic today, fangirls, I think it's a really interesting topic. And of course, you're a mother, mashallah, to a teenage daughter.
I am.
It is definitely something we should be talking about, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think that it's actually really, really important that you discuss this topic because it's becoming a real hot issue within the Muslim community. And you can see that, yes, I have a daughter who's of teenage years now, and she tells me about some of the experiences that she has with her friends and the kind of discussions that they have, and I think it's quite troublesome, some of the things that are going on. So definitely I'm all in favour of having this discussion, and it's a much needed discussion to have.
Alhamdulillah. So now we'll be moving on to that discussion, inshallah. So let's go straight to her views, and we'll be discussing fangirls. Celebrity culture has always been part of youth culture, and today with reality TV and social media, the enticing world of the celebrity has become even more accessible and encourages increasing interest in the lives, shopping habits and relationships of the rich and famous. And the Muslim youth are not exempt from this obsession. So what is the effect of celebrity on one's deen, and how should we be dealing with this as well? So Sister Sultan, I'm going to come up to you first. What can we do about this obsession, that the Muslim teenagers seem to have on the celebrities?
Okay, so first of all, let's outline what we're talking about here. Some psychologists have actually given this a term. They've called it celebrity worship syndrome. So there's an actual term. And it's not new. It exists. It's existed within a kind of secular thinking, secular genre for a really long time. And what it basically is that you have people who are famous, and then you have tends to be younger people, because we're talking about fangirls, who become, first of all, they take an interest in the celebrities, singers, writers, actors, all of this kind of thing, and then they become almost obsessed with these people, and these people become almost like the centre point of their life. So everything is focused upon them, everything that they do, all their thoughts, all their feelings, the pictures, all what have you. And they did a particular experiment where psychologists took 600 people in one study, and they found that a third of them suffered from the celebrity worship syndrome. So it is really, really rife. And what you'll find is what kind of obsessions are we talking about? Do they become obsessed with people like Stephen Hawking or the first woman who went into space? No. It's not these kind of celebrities that we're talking about. We're talking about people who are singers and actors. So there's a specific type of worship that's taking place, and it's kind of like what we would deem the kind of peripheral things, the entertainment industry kind of celebrity worship. And I think that the main reasons why this goes on in the Western context is because of a viewpoint towards life. There's a real attitude, especially in the entertainment culture, which is life is short, enjoy yourself. Just kind of happiness is very kind of, it's just for the here and now. There's no long standing, and just enjoy yourself to the max. And because success is defined by your looks and all those kind of outer things. And because of that, young people, vulnerable people feed into that because they want to be associated with somebody. somebody. And I think that that's part of the human instinct, that you want to identify with somebody or something. So that's not odd. But what tends to happen is that this growing trend, then it kind of spirals out of control. So you have had situations and circumstances. I remember when Michael Jackson died, there was an incident where a young man killed himself. Because there's a whole, with Michael Jackson, there's a whole, obsessive culture around him and his music and all of that kind of thing. That's not normal and it's not healthy. And I think what ends up happening is that Muslim teens are starting to be drawn into that kind of a thinking and that kind of a lifestyle. And the reasons as to why that's gone on is probably for very similar reasons as to why non-Muslim teens are going down that path, which is this sense of the wider society instructing them on the way that they should look at their life, that life is just for the here and now. It's momentary. It's all about the outside. It's all about success in your looks and, your status amongst people, popularity, all of those kind of things. And because they've adopted a lot of those kind of aspects of secular culture, they have fallen into the trap of also becoming absolutely obsessed with groups and individuals.
But couldn't we say that perhaps even, a bit of curiosity into that sort of lifestyle, because Muslims obviously lead a different sort of lifestyle, that that's why maybe Muslim youngsters are becoming a bit obsessed with this as well?
Absolutely. I think there's basically a spectrum to this, that you have that normal kind of view where you basically latch on to what is successful. So it's like you're discussing about the instinctual issue here, that we naturally look up to people who seem to be successful. Yes. So what are those markers, isn't it? So you're talking about the wealth, the looks, these kind of things. So that's kind of coming back down to the kind of Western value thing. But it's actually natural for people to want to look for someone to look up to. So talking about the kind of the less extreme kind of interest that we have. So we're naturally drawn, our eyes are naturally drawn to these women who seem to present something that is truly achieving them happiness. But are they truly happy? That's another issue. The other thing about just entertainment. It's kind of morbid entertainment that we can have from seeing someone fall. That sometimes it's to make ourselves feel better, but also to kind of, at least they're a human being, unless at least my life isn't as bad as I think it is. And then of course you throw into just the normal instinct of the procreational instinct. This kind of needs for relationships. So it's amongst girls of a certain age, remember, isn't it? So this is the other element, that they're drawn to, guys who look a certain way or sound a certain way or talk about certain things, isn't it? Because it kind of gets sucked into that kind of issue.
You're absolutely right, but I think part of it is also a little bit to do with escapism. We all look for avenues. Some people read, some people watch movies, some people like to listen to music. Whatever the kind of escapism form it takes, there is an element to that in this discussion as well.
So it's a way of having a bit of a fantasy life alongside what you're living through as well. I mean, but it can be really difficult, I think, for parents who do have teenagers. I mean, how can they cope with this sort of mentality or even behaviour?
I think it's a really important question, and I think we need to kind of talk very openly about this. I think for a lot of parents are probably, listening to this discussion thinking, oh my gosh, hang on, let me go and check my teenage daughter's room, see what kind of poster she's got lined up or whatever else it is. I think we need to just hang on a second. It's quite normal for teenagers to go through phases. I think that's something that does need to be said. Yeah. So often teenagers will have a phase where they're more interested in something, and they'll, kind of experiment with that. They'll read books, they'll go online, they'll look at pictures with regards to that, whether that's a film or a book or whatever else it is. But when it gets to the point where it's starting to impact on their daily life, I think then steps and actions need to take place. Until it gets to that point, I think if you step in, it can have detrimental effects. So you really, as a parent, you really have to judge the situation. Is this a normal interest in something? Or is it getting to the point where this child is actually becoming obsessed? Yeah,
because you have to give them room to grow as well.
You've got to make a judgment call. You can't pinpoint on everything that they're doing. It's perfectly normal, especially if you're in a class where everybody's watching the same thing, everyone's listening to the same thing. It's only natural for them to feel that way inclined and to want to know, what's happening in the latest soap drama or whatever else it is. But I think there does need to be a clear distinction when that interest turns into an obsession. And referring back to the figures that Sister Sultana was talking about, That research also showed that 36% of people are suffering from some form of celebrity worship syndrome, and 1 in 4 is so taken with their idol that actually it's impeding on their daily actions and their daily routines. Now, when it gets to that point, serious action does need to be taken, because this is no longer just an interest. This is becoming a psychological condition where they feel like their whole life is now centered around this individual, and it can actually become dangerous for them to the point where perhaps they could harm themselves, either psychologically or physically, if they're unable to kind of, get in touch with their celebrity or whatever else it is. And when I was looking into this, subhanAllah, it gets to the point where some of these fans, they actually almost takes on a religious aspect for them. Some fan bases resemble religions. You have this obsessiveness, and this research showed that fans also perform rituals which have parallels that we often see in some cults. For example, they make sure they watch all of the shows of the celebrities. It doesn't matter how many they are. 100 episode, 200 episode, it doesn't matter. They'll make sure they tune in, or they'll want to purchase items which have been just touched by the celebrity, or which the celebrity has worn, or whatever else it is. And when it gets to this point, that's when parents really need to step in. Now, I used to teach teenage girls. I know what they're like. I've had so many conversations with them about this. And one of the things that I find is parents really, subhanAllah, maybe they don't know the extent of what is available online. And the kind of communities that are built up online. So one of the things I found is often the teenage girls are quite into their bands or whatever else it is. And when I've asked the parent, look, do you know that your daughter comes into school every morning and she spends about 20 minutes speaking about what her, her favourite celebrity did last night? And they're like, no, hang on a second, I didn't even know. When does she have access to the internet? So I think parents really need to clue themselves up about what's happening online, what are they getting involved with, what are they looking at? And you shouldn't feel shy to put restrictions down on your child and say, you know what, you're only using the internet for 10 minutes.
That's it though, isn't it? It's your job as a parent to step in. I mean, sister, mashallah, you've got a teenager, so you can give us some real-time sort of advice.
Has actually touched upon something which is very, very important, and I'm very passionate about, which is that if children are experiencing things like depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, which is attributed to if you have celebrity worship, some children self-harm because they feel that, if they feel out of touch with their celebrity, sometimes it can result in that. That didn't happen in a vacuum. That didn't happen kind of overnight. And people's personalities aren't formed overnight. And yes, teenagers are in a very vulnerable, they're at a really vulnerable time in their life when they're trying to find out who they still are. And so, yes, they're going to cross some boundaries, they're going to want to know, and they're going to want to understand, where are the parents? This is the question. As Muslims, we lay down a different marker for our kids. We should have done. That was for us, that life isn't about just the kind of momentary view of happiness that we trying to teach our kids. You mentioned Sheikh Akram Nadwi, and in a famous parenting course, he actually said that one of the concepts we need to teach our children is that actions have consequences. So that if you do go down that line, that's going to result in a particular consequence to how it affects your behaviour.
SubhanAllah. I mean, we're just going to have to stop there, but inshallah, we will come back to this point. So we're off to a quick break now, but do stay tuned, as after the break we'll be back to continue our discussion in our main segment, Her Views, where we're discussing fangirls. So we'll see you in a few minutes. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back. You're watching Women's AM with myself, and on the panel today we have Sister Zainab Hassana and our special guest, Sister Sultana Parveen. So mashallah, we've been talking about the issue of fangirls, and so, Sister Sultana, before we went to the break, you were making comments about the parents' role in making sure that their kids don't get to a certain stage.
Yes. I mean, I think it's really important, even just to do with parenting in Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts so much emphasis on nurturing our child and raising them with the correct thinking and the attitude towards life. We want to teach our children, if we have a close relationship with them, love. We want to show them love, mercy, especially in the teen years, that they need to feel that we're there for them, especially with daughters. And on top of that, that they have a sense of accountability to Allah themselves, which is extraneous from you. It has nothing to do with your relationship with them. But the most important thing is that even if they are curious and they have questions and they want to follow something, do they feel comfortable enough to tell you? Do they feel comfortable enough to tell you things that are going on in their life? And what you'll find is that in most cases where this is taking place, they don't. There's a kind of secrecy around, you know, these young girls' lives. I mean, we all remember what it was like to be teenagers and that whole experience and what that can be like. It's a very daunting time. But the most important thing at that time is that parents are already there in the child's life. They're active in that child's life, so that if the child, you know, if the teenager wants to tell them something, I'm curious about vampires, I'm curious about, you know, then the parent is listening to that and they can give them constructive, unjudgmental advice which isn't going to just shut down the discussion. And this then would prevent this kind of vulnerability aspect which is attributed to celebrity hero worship. Children who tend to go down that path where they become so obsessed is because something is lacking in their own life. Something's lacking. They become attached to figures and personalities because something is lacking in their own life. And I have to say, as a parent myself of 3 children, you know, that has to lay at the door of the parents. It has to, you know, that we need to feel responsible for that. Why are our children not coming to us? Why are we not their biggest role models? Why are they not fangirling us? Why don't they look to us as their examples? Why don't they think, you know, when they have a thought in their head that I need to go and tell my mum this?
I think it's sometimes that, you know, as parents, we can have the attitude where we really, really want our kids to do well and to behave a certain way, and we get so passionate about it that we don't realise that we're putting off our kids from having, you know, really good open discussions with us about certain things, because we tend to jump the gun a little bit. You know, we get upset and say, well, why are you doing this and why are you doing that? But like you said, to be non-judgmental and to actually listen to what they're saying so that they feel comfortable to talk to us about these things. But, you know, subhanAllah, as you were saying, that as Muslims, we have certain values, we have certain rules that we need to follow. And Sister Zainab, let me come to you on this topic of, you know, what Islam has to say about this culture.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we need to break the issue, the problem down.